Hello. In this video I'm going to be looking at how we can use data annotations to validate our models before we enter them into our database on a web application. So what I've got set up is a very simple example application here. It's the music store tutorial, which is quite a commonly used tutorial. I think it's like open source type stuff, so you can go and find this if you search for MVC music store. You can find that it's split into a bunch of like tutorial sections basically. But what I've got set up, I've got a simple model here. Like, imagine we're making a music store, a music shop. So I've got a model that represents an order that a user might make. So it's got things like the order ID, the date they made the order, username, first name, last name, and then you can see the rest, age, address. Now, the thing is, some of these parameters we want the user to be able to set. Some of them we don't want the user to be able to set. We don't want the user to be able to type in a price, for example, or their order ID or the order date. These are things that we want to automatically be filled in. We want to make sure the email is an email address and works as an email address, because presumably we're going to send an email out to confirm that you've placed the order, and some other things that we'll get to. So this is the model is the order. We've essentially, to get to the stage where I am now, all you need to do is create this model and then make a controller using the normal scaffolding route, and you'll get your basic CRUD, create, read, update, and delete actions in the store manager controller, or whatever you called your whatever you happen to call your stuff. But the thing we're going to be interested in is creating a new entry. So that's done in this create view. So it uses the model here, MVC music store models order, which is this class here. And what we've done is we've used, instead of going through and writing out a form ourselves using the things like editor for, and then you'd put like a lambda type. So I wonder if we've got one that's already, if we go to account, probably not, don't worry about it. So if we use this editor for model, this HTML helper is looking at the model that we're using in this view, and it makes the whole form for us. So if I click on create, click run in Google Chrome, put that to one side, let's put this in here. And what it's done is the HTML it's generated has made a form, an editor for our model. So it's just got everything here. Every parameter has an editor, and I could type stuff into these, and I'd be able to create a new entry in the database. Now this is great, because to do this with Visual Studio, I had to, virtually zero coding. I defined my model and click scaffold, and it created this all for me. But Visual Studio only knows about your class. It doesn't know about your application and your business needs, or how you actually want this thing to work. All it knows is that age is an int, so it's given us an editor for an int. It doesn't know that you can't have a negative age, right? That's the issue here. And so what we have to do is we have to add some more information to our model that gives the framework everything it needs to know to make this form make sense for our actual application, rather than it just being editing a bunch of data. And that's where we're going to use something called data annotations. I'm going to stop this running. Let's do something like this. Right, so data annotations we're going to put in our model definition. It's in our class definition. And it uses this namespace, component model.data annotations. And there's a whole bunch of different things, a whole bunch of different annotations. So I'm going to go through some examples, and then if you've seen how they're used, then probably if you've got an idea, or I wonder if there's an annotation for that, you can Google it and find it and use it. So I want to start out with one that's called scaffold column. Now, what this has done is this editor for model has just created an editor for each parameter, but we don't want that. So what we can do is we can add a data annotation like this. So we want to tell it the order ID. We don't want there to be anything here for order ID. So I can put here scaffold column is false. So this is our annotation, scaffold column, and we're giving it an input of false, which means we don't want to scaffold an input for this parameter, the order ID. So let's do that for order date. Column, let's do that false. What else don't we want? Let's say we don't want the total either. We don't want a form for the total. So scaffold column false. And you'd have to write some logic to get that total from somewhere else in your application. So let's click create again. Click run. And we can see that they've disappeared. So that's the first annotation. So something else on here is that these names look a bit rubbish. So we've got first name, there's no space in between, and this email confirm, that what does that even mean? Yeah, so let's give this some data and make it a bit more human readable. So we can add something called display. And display, we want to display, and the autocomplete is telling us the inputs it expects, and we want name equals, and this is first name. Okay, so I've put the space in there. I'm going to copy and paste this. Let's have this last name. And then I'm going to change this one as well. Display. Retype your email address. So if I run this now, then you can see the ones that we've changed, first name, last name, retype your email address, they've updated. So that's display. And what's quite nice about having this all these annotations things defined at our model level is that we're separating our concerns again with the model and the controller and the view. So you know that everything regarding your model is in your class definition. So you know if you want to change the display name, you don't have to go hunting around through these views to, like, you could imagine you could use HTML helpers, but then actually hard code in the names and build the form manually. But what this is doing is everything that's to do with our model is kept in this one place, and that makes things a lot better to maintain your code and all this kind of stuff. It's really, that's why we do it. Next one, which is really important, well, they're all really important, but we have something, the required annotation. So I'm not going to do this for everything. So these ones here, display and scaffold column, they're not really to do with validation. They're to do with kind of the appearance of our form. They're adding metadata to this model, which then can be used to better format all this stuff. Now the next ones we're going to be talking about are to do with validation, which makes sure that this model is correct before it's sent it to the server. So let's do required. Let's say that first name and last name is required. Well, actually, let's say, do you know what? We only really, let's say in our application, we only really care about your username and your email address. And we want, the other thing is that we want it required for you to confirm your email address. And we'll just leave it like that for now. So let's see. Oh, no, I haven't gone to create, but I can. Right, so if I click create, there we've got, it's automatically done the validation, and where there are these errors, it's put this error message for us. So the email field is required, the retype your email address field is required, username field is required. So actually we've seen something here. Me calling this retype your email address isn't good because the display name will be, this doesn't make sense. The retype your email address field is required. What we can do is we can actually write our own custom error message. So we can have required. Oh, we're running. And we can give this, we can say error message, please confirm your email address. Okay, so I've added a custom error message to this particular attribute, or this particular validation test. So I'm in create. And I click create. It says please confirm your email address. Yeah, so it's coming from what I just wrote there. So the next one will have, we can limit the string length of things. So let's say we have a requirement that a username has a string length of maximum length. So this is where the first parameter is maximum length of, let's do 10. I'm just going to be really low to just illustrate this. We can also have a minimum length. Minimum length equals 2. Okay. So let's run this again. I probably don't need to keep showing you these. You just trust me, they work. So let's just make this really long. The field username must be a string with a minimum length of 2 and a maximum length of 10. So again, that's an automatically generated error message. You could put a custom one in if you wanted, because honestly that's a bit wordy, isn't it? But it's fine for now. The next one we're going to do is email address. So this is quite a nice one. So we can put email address, because this, our email here, we're expecting an email address. And that will check that the thing you've typed in there is an email address. We'll add something. We'll test that in a minute. I want to do a couple. So this first one, so we're validating our initial email here and saying if that is or isn't valid as an email address. But this confirm thing here, what we want to do with this is we want to compare it. So you compare, and we compare that with email. So what that will do is that will make sure this is the same as this, and if not, it will get a validation error message there. So let's run it. Order create. So let's first type in a non-valid email address. Not an email. Okay, so please include an @ in the email address. So that's quite a nice little, I didn't realize it even did that. A little pop up here. So, and what that's going to be doing, that's doing some that's validation happening on the client side. Yeah, we haven't even sent anything to the server and it's validating the email address. So we can do so let's just say my email at email.com. But this one we're going to do I made a typo at email.com. Yeah, this and this do not match. Yeah, and you can see how that was a bad name for me to pick for this again. But there, so it's checking to see if this matches. You could use that for passwords. You should definitely use it for passwords. Like, can you imagine a typo on a password and then you can never access your account? And the last one I'll show you today is range. And range is like... Oh, wait. So remember, I could put in a negative age. Well, what we can do is we can do range. And we can put a minimum and maximum. Let's not put a maximum for age, but let's say our minimum is that you've got to be 18 to use this. Oh, and I think we need to put a maximum as well. We do need to put a maximum. Okay, let's put 100. So then if we do create and then run, then so there we go. So I tried to put a negative in, didn't like it. If I tried to put 101 in, again I get the validation error. So you can add some things to this to make the validation, all these little validations happen client side. That's something that I'll go into in a later video, or I think it's in the to-do list tutorial I did. But if you're on my course, then it will be in our later lecture when we look at JavaScript and jQuery and Ajax and all this stuff. So yeah, so that's the basics of data annotations, and hopefully you're getting this idea that these are really powerful and really important things to put into your models, which will help you with this form. Something when you're building these websites and using the tools that are available for you. Like a lot of this stuff, the tools are really easy to use, but they can't read your mind. They just are looking at it from the basic mechanics in a way, so that they see that this is a model and this is an int and everything. It doesn't know what age means. Yeah, so it's not going to know that -10 is not a valid age. The other thing which I want to mention is I've done here scaffold column false has gotten rid of the box for typing in order ID, but pretty much anyone could you can get any development tools for web applications allows you to send requests with custom data on it, so you don't have to fill out this form to send a request to the server. So remember what's happening here is when I fill out this form, I'll click create, and a post HTTP request is being made with all of the data that I've entered into the form, and then the create method here is taking all that data in, and the model binding is then looking through all the data in this form, all the post data that came with the HTTP request, and matching it to parameters in this model and just putting them in there. So you could get this developer toolkit or whatever. Like there's you can get some applications for Chrome, in fact, some extensions that allow you to do this really easily, and you could put in your own total for the price, for example, and make it 0, or even make it negative. Maybe that would screw something up if you've written your application really badly and don't test for that. Maybe you end up sending money to the client rather than getting it. But you can imagine how that could cause all sorts of headaches. So what you need to do is you need to make sure you're doing this using this bind function here. This is another example of a data attribute, right? So what it's doing is you've got include, and then you give a list of the parameters you actually want the user to be able to create. So you add that list, and that way, even if someone tries to add something like, in this case, price is part of it, but you could take that out, for example, if you didn't want that price information to come from that request. So yeah, you could take out, you're restricting what the binder will actually look for in that form data, and that will prevent what's called an overposting attack, which is what I was describing previously, where someone comes in and instead of filling out your form, they're manually putting in data into a request, sending that to your server, and adding information that a user shouldn't be able to add. Okay, I hope that's been a good introduction then to data annotations and how you can use it to help you with validation. As always, any questions, let me know. Comments in the video here, or follow me on Twitter at Dr. Sean Walton. And yeah, and I will take requests for further videos. This was kind of a basics of this. You can also actually write your own custom validation methods and attach those to data attributes and make your own data attributes for more complex models. You can make models that validate themselves, that are like self-validating for more complex things. So that these are all possible things, but they come from this basic. This is like the basic step one, and then it's more advanced to do these other things. Cool. Let me know if you've got any requests for videos. Otherwise, thanks for watching.